Didn't even have to say anything. Just two buddies hanging out. One buddy picks up his phone, the other buddy takes his sleeping spot, stares out the window, and then licks ears. Get out of the ears. Hey, you. What are you doing? Hey, you know what, Jaw? Your aunt got a surprise shirt in the mail yesterday with your face on it. Imagine how excited she was. You look at my arm? You look at my tattoo? You look at my tattoo? Get out of here. Daze with Jordan the Lion begins now. We were taking the stairs to leave the apartment building today. And right at the base of the stairs, there's a little mini inflatable mattress. Some homeless person has brought their inflatable mattress in and is sleeping in our stairwell. So I went ahead and grabbed it and threw it in the trash because I've had enough of the crazy screaming and nonsense that happens at night. I'm gonna go out there with a baseball bat pretty soon. Start leveling some people like Babe Ruth. It's getting pretty out of control. About the last 3 nights, 1 in the morning, I hear people hooping and hollering and acting weird and yelling at each other, and it's about time for Bam Bam to come out. Bam Bam. I haven't quite narrowed down what we're gonna do today for the vlog, but I have about 3 ideas, and they're all pretty similar, like pretty close to each other as far as neighborhoods and everything. So I'm just gonna walk Jaw for a little bit. I have to do a couple of things around the house real quick, and then I think I'm just gonna hop in the car, and whichever one I go to is the one I'll end up doing. I know both places pretty well, and they're both pretty cool music related places. I love my music just as much as I love my silent movies, and these 2 places I think are definitely worth vlogging. So you'll get one of them today. I don't know which one yet though. So much for getting a walk in. Well, looks like I just got a new guitar. See, down in my lobby of my apartment building, there's a section of, like a corner of the, kind of where the mail is, where everybody just abandons stuff they don't want. And there's always dishes, and there's books, and there's DVDs, and lamps, and you just never know. And I went down to mail something out, and this was sitting there. A Stratocaster, which is kind of funny considering one of the options of what I'm going to do today. But I don't really need a Stratocaster, but as soon as I saw it, I thought, art project. I don't know whether it works or not, but what I do know is that if it doesn't work, I can make it working again, and I'm definitely going to repaint it. And I think I'm going to turn it into something. A functioning guitar, theoretically. I mean, I kind of feel like it goes without saying now that I literally just found a guitar, I have to do the vlog that I was thinking of. I found one of Les Paul and Mary Ford's houses here in Hollywood. Les Paul invented the solid state guitar, the solid body guitar. Get away from my guitar, you! Wow, check out this house. This was not my destination, but when I saw it, I had to stop. Wow. That is cool. Nice. Well, I almost couldn't believe it when I got here. I had to double and triple check the address, and then I finally found pictures of somebody pointing this out. This is where Les Paul and Mary Ford used to live throughout the 40s and the early 50s. And there used to be a garage that sat on this property, and the garage is actually the garage where Les Paul invented multi-track recording. Before Les Paul, there was no overdubbing. He figured out that there was this method that he could record his parts, listen to them through headphones, record more. And I remember him being on a television show demonstrating this. And when he was asked about it, how many how many overdubs he had done. He said he had done up to 12 guitars on one song with 12 of Mary's vocals over it, so 24 tracks. It was called Phase 4 recording at the time. But I mean, it's amazing because Les Paul was like, he learned to play guitar when he was 8 years old. And he actually was the person who invented the solid body guitar. He said that he played like an old Roadhouse like barbecue joint when he was a kid, like back when you could do that, right outside of Wisconsin. He was in like outside of Milwaukee, kind of near where he was from, and he said he was playing it, and he said that there was a guy who was sitting in a rumble seat in a car while he was doing his gig that night, and told the like bellhop lady, gave her like reviews on the comedian and all the acts that performed that night, and said like the comedian was good, this was good, that was good, but they said the guitar needed to be louder. And so he took that, and he said, I went home and I started thinking about how a guitar worked, and he said, I got this theory in my head that if I could get a solid piece of wood down, that I would get the most reverberation. I realized that's where it was coming from. So what he did was he conducted a little experiment, and he said he took a railroad post, because that was the most rigid, dense thing that he could find, and he tied a string and then had the string go down. He just did a one-string guitar, and he plucked it, and he put a telephone receiver underneath it and listened to, and then like wired that through his so he could listen to it through his radio. And that's how he actually learned about amplification. He said he did that, and he said it was just amazing. And then he said he took up a pine box, he tied a string on that, strummed it with the telephone underneath it going through the radio, and said that it was way quieter. And he said it dawned on me. He said I got up and ran to my mom, and I said, I've discovered the key. I know how to make a solid guitar. And shows her what he's talking about, and she says, the day that you see a singing cowboy on a guitar or on a horse with a railroad post, you let me know. But he said I knew I was onto something, so he just kept making these prototypes, prototype after prototype. Trying to figure out what the key to this thing was. And he finally did it with a 4x4. He had this basically like a neck of a guitar on a 4x4 post. It was called the log. And he wired it all up, and that was it. That was kind of the basis of what became the Les Paul guitar. He had two clip-on little like flimsy side pieces that he could snap on there. And he started trying to market it, going around to like Gibson and some of the guitar companies, and they didn't want to do it. But he had a friend, Leo Fender, and he and Leo would work on these ideas together. You know, he would show him what he was doing. And so Leo Fender tried to get Les to let him release the guitar under the Fender label that Leo was about to start up. And Les said, no, I want to sell it to the biggest company around. So Leo Fender went into production and actually was the very first mass production of solid body guitars were Fenders. He produced the Telecaster, which I have owned both. I used to have a Les Paul Custom. I played that for years, and then just at one point I played it one day and I was like, this isn't the sound I want anymore. And I switched over to playing a Telecaster. And my Telecaster was actually like kind of a Frankenstein put together by Gilby Clarke from Guns N' Roses. I know I've told you guys that story, but I played that for a while, and then eventually I didn't want the sound of either one, and I moved away from both of those. But what ended up happening was the Fender guitars took off. They became really popular, and Gibson came back and made a deal with Les Paul, and Les Paul became the norm. It was pretty crazy. I mean, and if you don't know what the Les Paul guitar is, you probably recognize it by the people that play it. I mean, it's everybody from Pete Townsend, Jimmy Page, Joe Perry, Slash, Weezer, who else? God, I mean, pretty much everybody. Zakk Wylde, Randy Rhoads, who haven't I said? Paul McCartney, Ace Frehley. I mean, they all did it. But right here was the house. This was the house that throughout the 40s, when Les was creating that guitar, see, he didn't even get the Gibson didn't pick up his design until the early 50s. So he had created this solid body guitar in like 41. It wasn't until 51 that they actually picked it up. So he created the multi-track recording while he was here. And what's weird is during that time that he lived here, he and Mary were on a pretty hazardous car accident. And she just broke her pelvis, but he broke like many parts of his body, his nose, his shoulder, his ribs, and actually broke his arm, his picking arm, in 3 different places. And they told him he probably would never play guitar again. And they said that he would have limited use of that arm, so they were going to have to set it, and he wouldn't really be able to move it. So he had him set it at a 90-degree angle so that he could play guitar. Isn't that crazy? And he ended up going on to, Les Paul and Mary Ford had many, many hits. I'm sure you know most of them. He also had hundreds of commercials. He was on television, always demonstrating his inventions. He eventually became a member of the American Music Hall of Fame. He's a member of the Inventors Hall of Fame. Pretty crazy. And even he played guitar the rest of his life. You can find commercials where he was like in his 80s playing, just whipping off these fast licks in commercials, even to the point where he lived in New Jersey for the rest of his life. And for the last 13 years of his life, he had a standing gig every single Sunday. He would play this place in his neighborhood and never missed. Isn't that crazy? 13 years of the last 13 years of his life playing every single Sunday. You could have walked in and seen Les Paul. It's pretty fantastic. Little chunk of history right here that nobody will ever know about. People are walking past me this whole time I've been filming this, going in and out of the Bonham's auction house parking and whatnot, and they will never know that the very first guitar god, I mean, some people might even say Charlie Christian was a guitar god also, but before Les Paul, there was nobody that young guitar players had to look up to. I mean, all those people that I mentioned that play a Les Paul have all performed with Les Paul, not just the guitar, but the man himself, or have stated in guitar magazines that he was the influence for them wanting to play. Just to think that garage once sat here. The very first major purchase I ever made in my life, I had a job bussing tables at a restaurant that my sister worked at, and I didn't have to buy a car yet. I was 15 years old and I'd saved up about $1,100, and I was taking guitar lessons at a place that I had always taken guitar lessons at, and I was in there looking around one day, and I looked at a Les Paul that the guy had recently got in, and I said, geez, I can't afford $1,600. And he's like, yeah, I know, at your age is pretty tough. And I said, I mean, I'm a few hundred away. And he's like, I'll sell it to you for $1,000. And that guy's a really good friend of mine even to this day. But yeah, he sold me my first Les Paul for $1,000. And it was a Les Paul custom. It looked just like the one Randy Rhoads played. It was like cream colored with a black pick guard. It was beautiful. But like I said, eventually one day, you know, in the course of being a musician, I was playing it. The sound just didn't appeal to me anymore. So that was it. I don't play it anymore. I'm a DePinto man now, or at least for now. Check out this awesome birdhouse. That's awesome. I'm gonna assume a little kid lives there. I'm gonna assume. Pretty beautiful sky right now.